Miguel Correa was a man shaped by the harshness of life. At the age of 50, she carried with her the weight of a history marked by the absence of love and the rigidity imposed from an early age. The only child of an authoritarian father and a submissive mother, Miguel learned early on that feelings were a luxury he could not afford. He grew up hearing that strong men don't cry, that emotions are weaknesses, and that success was the only thing that really mattered. Over the years, he became exactly what his father wanted: a focused, disciplined, and ruthless man. Miguel built a business empire, but in doing so, he isolated himself from everything and everyone. There was no time for friendships, much less for love. His heart, he believed, was made of stone, and so it was protected from any pain. On the silent nights, however, Miguel found himself alone in his large apartment in the center of the city, surrounded by luxury, but filled with an emptiness that he could not explain. He spent hours looking out the window, watching the lights of the city that he never slept, but that for him were just a reminder that his life went on without real purpose. Sometimes his gaze was lost in the immensity of the horizon, as if he were looking for something that he himself did not know how to define. Even if he didn't admit it, Miguel missed something that money couldn't buy. He was a practical, rational man who believed he had everything under control. But deep down, a part of him knew that his life was incomplete. This feeling consumed him in silence. But it was never enough to make him change. After all, change required giving up what he cherished most: control. For Miguel, love was uncharted territory, a mystery he preferred to avoid. I had already had a few relationships, all fleeting and based on convenience. He didn't believe in true connections. He thought everything was fleeting. And so, he never allowed anyone to really get close. Emotional isolation was his armor, but also his prison. That night, as the distant sound of the city echoed like a constant hum, Miguel wondered, for the first time in years, whether he was living or just surviving. It was a question he quickly pushed aside, as he always did, immersing himself in his routine and the commitments that distracted him from what he feared most: facing himself. He didn't know it, but fate was already beginning to draw new paths, and soon life would present him with a choice that would change everything. Miguel still couldn't imagine that meeting a woman completely different from him would challenge all his beliefs and bring out a side that he believed didn't exist. Michael's stone heart was about to be tested. The next morning, Miguel woke up with the usual weight of routine, but something inside him seemed slightly different. He tried to ignore this feeling, immersing himself in the day's commitments: endless meetings, contracts to review, negotiations that required his meticulous attention. The rigidity of his posture and the coldness of his words kept his reputation intact. He was a ruthless man, admired and feared in equal measure. However, when the afternoon came, Miguel felt a tiredness that seemed more than physical. It was as if something inside him was beginning to give way. A slight crack in the wall he had erected over the years. Without knowing exactly why, he decided to leave the office early. He did not return home as he usually did. Instead, he drove through the busy streets of the city with no certain destination, until his eyes caught his attention: a small corner restaurant. It was a simple place, with a charming facade that clashed with the cold grandeur of the surrounding buildings. The tables on the sidewalk were occupied by people chatting animatedly. And there was an energy in the air that seemed inviting. Without thinking too much, Miguel parked the car and got in. As soon as he walked through the door, he was greeted by a warm aroma of homemade food, something he hadn't felt in years. The laughter and the sound of cutlery banging on the plates created relaxed, almost familiar atmosphere. Miguel, accustomed to sophisticated restaurants where silence predominated, felt slightly out of place. He chose a table in the corner where he could observe everything without being noticed, and waited. It was then that she appeared. Anna, the owner of the restaurant, circulated between the tables with a naturalness that Miguel found intriguing. She smiled at customers, asked about her days, made little jokes. There was a lightness to his gestures that contrasted sharply with Miguel's rigid and calculated world. When she finally reached his desk, something in her eyes disarmed him for a moment. "Good afternoon. It's your first time here, isn't it?" Anna asked with a smile that seemed to light up the room. "Yes," Miguel replied shortly, as he averted his eyes, trying to avoid that feeling of discomfort that her smile caused. Anna didn't seem to be bothered by his coldness. He gave some menu suggestions and, without waiting too long, took the order. But before leaving, he casually commented, "I hope you like it. Here, we believe that food is not only used to feed the body, but also the soul." Miguel was thoughtful with that sentence. Feed the soul? It was something he had never considered. While waiting, he watched Anna continue to serve the tables, always with the same energy and affection. It wasn't something forced, he could tell. There was an authenticity to her that was almost disconcerting. When the dish arrived, Miguel was surprised. The food was simple, but it tasted comforting, as if it brought back memories he didn't know he held. He looked again at Anna, who was now laughing with a family at another table. He didn't understand why, but he felt a slight pang of curiosity. On the way out, Anna thanked her with the same warm smile. "Come back whenever you want, Miguel," she said. Reading the name on the credit card he used to pay, he just nodded, unaware that this brief encounter would be the first step towards something that would change his life forever. Miguel started to return to Anna's restaurant, almost without realizing it. At first, he justified to himself that it was because of the food. "It's comforting," she thought, as if she needed an excuse to show up. But as the days passed, it became clear that the real reason was beyond the menu. There was something about that small restaurant, and especially about Anna, that attracted him in a way that he could not explain. Anna, in turn, quickly noticed that Miguel was different from her other customers. He always sat at the same table, in the corner, alone, with a serious and reserved countenance. He was polite but distant, never offering more than was necessary in words. Still, there was something in his eyes, something that seemed to scream for help, even though he tried hard to hide it. "You're becoming a habitué around here, Miguel," she said one afternoon, pouring the coffee he had ordered. "The food is good," he replied in a neutral voice. Anna laughed softly. "I hope it's not just that. I try to make this place a space where people feel at home." Miguel looked up at her, trying to decipher that lightness that seemed so natural. He wasn't used to being treated like that. In his world, interactions were always fraught with interests or formalities. But Anna was different. There was something about her that was genuine, as if she could see beyond the hard shell he projected out into the world. The meetings continued, almost like a silent ritual. Miguel appeared at the restaurant at least twice a week, always at the same table, always alone. Anna made a point of attending to him personally, taking every opportunity to start a conversation. She never forced anything, but little by little, the words that had previously been so scarce began to flow. "What do you do, Miguel?" she asked one night, as she cleaned the table next to his. He hesitated, as if the question caught him off guard. "Business. I'm a businessman." "I imagine it's very busy. He seems like the kind of person who doesn't have time for himself," Anna commented, with a smile that was not judgmental, but curious. Miguel let out a slight sigh, something he rarely did. "Work fills time, keeps the mind busy." Anna leaned slightly, as if she wanted to get closer without invading. "And the heart?" The question remained in the air, hovering like a light breeze through an open window. Miguel looked away, uncomfortable, but did not answer. That bothered him because it was true. He didn't know what to say because he had never thought of the heart as something that needed attention. Over time, these conversations began to become the most anticipated part of his visits. Anna had a special ability to ask questions that went beyond the superficial, but always in a gentle way, as if she were planting seeds without rushing to see them bloom. Miguel, reluctant at first, began to realize that those conversations aroused in him a curiosity that he had not felt for years. One night, when the restaurant was emptier, Anna pulled up a chair and sat down at Miguel's table. He looked at her with a mixture of surprise and discomfort, but he didn't protest. "You know, Miguel, I work here every day, surrounded by people, listening to stories, and I learned one thing. People always carry something. Some leave this weight exposed. Others keep it so well that no one notices. But you're different." It's as if he carried the whole world on his back. Miguel was silent, staring at the cup of coffee in front of him. Her words struck him deeper than he would care to admit. "Maybe I've learned that it's easier this way," he said finally. Anna smiled, but her look was one of tenderness. "Easier, perhaps, but it doesn't mean it's better. Sometimes sharing the weight with someone makes all the difference." At that moment, Miguel felt a small crack in his armor. He didn't know if he was ready to open up, but one thing was certain. Anna was changing something inside him, even if he still couldn't fully understand it. Miguel began to realize that something had changed inside him. Anna's restaurant visits were no longer just an escape from his routine, but moments he looked forward to. It was as if, little by little, the armor he had built throughout his life began to unravel. He noticed small details that had previously gone unnoticed. The sound of Anna's laughter, the way she treated each customer with genuine attention, the almost magical energy that filled the room whenever she was around. One evening, after finishing his dinner, Miguel remained seated longer than usual, watching Anna as she chatted with the last customers of the day. When the restaurant finally emptied, she approached her table with a cup of tea in her hands. "You seem distracted today," Anna said, pulling up a chair and sitting down next to him. "Just thinking," Miguel replied with a faint smile. "What can I ask?" She looked at him with that curious twinkle in her eyes, which he was beginning to know so well. Miguel hesitated, but something inside him encouraged him to speak. "In my life, in what I made of her," Sometimes I wonder if all the effort was worth it. Anna smiled, but there was a seriousness to her expression. I think that's a question we all ask at some point. But what makes you doubt that now? Miguel stared at the table for a moment before answering. I don't know. Maybe it's the silence. To get home and realize that despite everything I've achieved, I have no one to share it with. Anna placed her hand softly on his, a gesture that surprised him by its simplicity and impact. The silence can be heavy, but sometimes it's just a reminder that there's still room for something new. At that moment, Miguel felt as if something inside him had been illuminated. It was a disconcerting feeling, but at the same time comforting. He realized that for the first time in years, he was beginning to allow someone into his life, and it scared him as much as it thrilled him. The conversations with Anna became more frequent and deeper. Michael, who had always been a reserved man, began to share parts of himself that he had never revealed to anyone. He talked about his childhood, the stern father, the absence of affection, and how it shaped the man he was. Anna listened attentively, without interrupting, as if each word was a piece of a puzzle that she tried to understand. My father always said that the world has no place for the weak, that love was a distraction, something that left us vulnerable. I grew up believing that. I learned to close the doors, not to depend on anyone. Anna watched him with a tender but firm look. And do you believe that to this day? Miguel hesitó antes de responder. I don't know. I think that at some point I came to believe that it was easier to live this way. No ties, no risks. Anna sighed softly, as if his words carried a weight that she also felt. I understand, Miguel. Sometimes closing your heart seems like the only way to protect yourself. But to live like this, is it really living? The question echoed in Miguel's mind. He had never thought of life that way. He had always believed that success and stability were enough, but now, for the first time, he was beginning to question whether he was really living or just surviving. You make it look so simple, he said almost in a whisper. Anna smiled, but there was a certain sadness in her eyes. It's not simple, Miguel. Opening your heart never is, but it is necessary. She got up, but before leaving, she left one last sentence. Love is not about weakness. It's about courage. Miguel stood alone at the table, reflecting on her words. He knew Anna was right, but he also knew that change meant facing wounds he had buried deep. It was a path he had never imagined he would take. But at that moment, something inside him pushed him forward, to find out if there was still something inside him that he could feel, that he could love. That week, Miguel made a decision that he himself did not fully understand. He called Anna in the middle of the afternoon, something he had never done before. Her voice, excited as he answered, reassured him. Anna, do you have some free time tonight? I'd like to invite you to dinner, he said, surprised at the courage he had to make the invitation. On the other end of the line, Anna laughed lightly, but her tone was warm. Dinner? This is unexpected, but I would love to. Hours later, Miguel was waiting for her in a different restaurant from the one he used to go to. It wasn't a luxurious place, but it had a cozy atmosphere that he knew would suit Anna. When she arrived, wearing a simple dress but with a smile that seemed to light up the room, Miguel realized that he was more nervous than he imagined. Over dinner, they talked about simple things, Anna's tastes, her stories of the restaurant, and even some of her small everyday frustrations. Miguel, who always dominated conversations with business and strategy, found himself just listening, captivated by every detail. He realized that being with Anna required no effort. It was as if everything flowed naturally. At the farewell, as they walked to the car, Anna looked at him with a sincere smile. "Thank you, Miguel. Not for dinner, but for showing me a side of yourself that I knew was there, but that you always hid." He didn't answer, just nodded with a faint smile. But inside, he felt something grow. A flame he didn't know still existed. A few days later, Miguel decided he needed to take an even bigger step. He knew that Anna was becoming more than just a friend. She was someone who made him want to be different, to be better. But to do so, he would have to face his own ghosts. At the restaurant, while Anna was finishing the workday, Miguel appeared by surprise. She was excited to see him, but noticed that he looked more serious than usual. "Anna, can I talk to you for a moment?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. They sat down at one of the empty tables, and Miguel took a deep breath before starting. "I'm not good with words, you know that. But since I met you, something inside me has changed. I began to realize how much I was stuck in the past, in fear, in loneliness, and somehow you showed me that there can be more, that I can be more." Anna was silent, absorbing every word. Miguel continued, "I know I still have a lot to learn, but I want to try. I want to open my heart to whatever it is that we're building." Anna smiled, her eyes shining with emotion. "You don't need to know everything right now, Miguel. Just be willing to try." At that moment, something solidified between the two. It was not just the beginning of a romance, but the promise that together they could rebuild what time and pain had broken. And so, Miguel and Anna began to write a new story, a story of courage, transformation, and love. Miguel, the man with a hardened heart, finally found the strength to break down his barriers and allow himself to live something he never believed possible. Hannah, with her light and patience, showed that true love does not require haste, but rather surrender and trust. But will Miguel be able to overcome all the challenges of his past? And Anna, will she be ready to deal with the deep marks he carries? What does the future hold for this couple who met in such an unlikely way? These questions still have no answer. And this is the most fascinating thing. Life is made up of chapters to be discovered. If you were touched by this story, imagine what else we can share together. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming exciting stories. Don't forget to leave your like and share this video with someone who also needs to believe that love can transform. We really want to hear from you. Write in the comments what you think of this story and let us know where you're watching it from. It'll be amazing to meet each one of you. And now, get ready for more emotions. On the screen will appear a link to the next video with another unforgettable story that will touch your heart. Click and come discover how the force of love can change lives. You won't want to miss it.